Shalom, shalom. Excited to learn with you today the Sefer HaChinuch, Mitzvot 27 to 29. Hopefully you can open your Sefer, your book, if we've been learning together. And these three are connected. In 27, we learn Shelo Lasot Pesel, right? That we shouldn't make a graven image. And in 28, Shelo Lishtachavot La'avodah Zarah, not to prostrate oneself in idol worship. And then 29, Shelo La'avod Avodah Zarah, B'masha Darka Lehi'avid, right? Not to worship an idol in its usual way of veneration. And we'll differentiate between 28 and 29 in just a moment. So to start here with 27, not to make a graven image, where the only religion, to my understanding, that is more strict than Judaism is Islam, where you'll still see images within synagogues, but within a mosque, for example, you won't find, you'll rarely find images at all. So it says here in the Torah, in Shmot 24, in Exodus 20, verse 4, Lo ta'aseh lecha pesel v'chol temuna. You shall not make yourself a graven image or any likeness of anything at all. And actually, it's interesting, because it says lecha, lo ta'aseh lecha, to you, the Rambam actually learns that normally you can't appoint a shaliach. You can't appoint a messenger to do a sin for yourself. But here, actually, you can. This is an exception that one can appoint, perhaps, according to this particular verse. One can appoint a messenger to build a graven image for them, but not for me. But we can appoint them for their own sake. And so it continues here. You shall have no other gods but me is considered as one negative precept, warning us that we should accept no God other than the one God, whether by acknowledging it as a divinity, by saying to it, you are my God, or by bowing to it, or by venerating it in one of the four forbidden ways of worship. Those four ways of forbidden worship are listed in Sanhedrin 60b, in the Talmud of Sanhedrin, as slaying a sacrifice is the first, burning any ritual substance on an altar is the second, pouring a libation of wine is a third way, and the fourth is prostration. That through those four ways, or in any of their own particular ways of worship. And he concludes Mitzvah 27, Da'al tifnu elilim velohei masecha lo tasu lechem. Do not turn to the idols or make for yourselves molten gods. Okay, so Mitzvah 27, Shelo Lasot Pesel. Don't make for you some kind of graven image. Because indeed, today it is very easy, especially in a materialistic age, to live on the surface level of reality, where we come to see the exteriorities of people and of objects, and miss the deeper telos, purpose, and interiority of other people and other things. And so this idea of moving away from a graven image is partially about false gods, but it's also about how we view the world. That we look for the inner depths, the inner sparks of holiness when we encounter the world and all of its diversity, and not merely find ourselves attracted to the externalities. So in Mitzvah 28, we learn Shelo Lishtachavot La'avodah Zarah, not to prostrate ourselves in idol worship. Now it's interesting, the difference between 28 and 29 here is that in Mitzvah 28, we're talking about serving any type of idol in the way that we serve, right? Forms of prayer or any way that we would consider a form of avoda, a form of service. Whereas 29, we're talking about serving something in a way that wouldn't even look like service to us, but is the way that someone else would serve would serve this God or this image. So Mitzvah 28, Lo tishtachaveh lehem v'lo ta'avdim. You shall not prostrate yourself before them or serve them. We learn in Exodus 20, verse 5. It goes on, Ki lo tishtachaveh le'el acher. For you shall not prostrate yourself to any other God. Exodus 34, verse 14. velo ta'avdim, and you shall not serve them. Now, it's interesting to think about the problems of panentheism, right? Pantheism is that everything is God, and essentially there was no creation. But panentheism means there was a creation, God is everything, but God is also beyond and separate from everything. Now, once there's godliness in everyone and everything, what does it mean to not serve through the godliness around us? This is part of the idea of many spiritual traditions, that if everything is God, then in fact we can serve through anything and everything. So let's bracket that big theological question, because while there's great debates among the monotheists around where God is, and thus how we can serve that God, it'll take a little bit too big of a tangent here. So let's come back to that. In Mitzvah 29, Shelo la'avod avodah zara b'ma shedarka laha'aved. Right, that we should not worship any idol, whatever in the world, by such means as those who believe in it customarily serve it. Shelo na'avod shum avodah zara ba'olam bidvarim shedarka she'ovdim ota b'ma'amanim va'af al pi she'ein avodata ba'achat me'arba avodot she'amarnu lamala. Right? So we see here, and then he brings Exodus 20, verse 5 from Shmot, and you shall not serve them, once again, v'lo ta'avdim. Right? And so we see here this idea that in Mitzvah 28, that we shouldn't serve in our way, and in 29, we shouldn't serve in their way, in ways that may even feel offensive. For example, the statue of Mercury, the custom was to throw stones at it. Now, it might feel to us like that's a way of shaming it. I disagree with you, I'm going to throw stones at the statue. But that's the way they served it. And so Mitzvah 29 says that we don't serve that way. Or the most classic case, the Baal Peor, they uncovered excrement in front of it. I mean, you talk about a way that you want to shame a statue or some kind of fake god, it would be through excrement. And yet that's the very way they served it. And so Mitzvah 29 comes to exclude that. Now, what I want to ask is, what is this idolatry in our own day? This idolatry that we're up against, right? We see that Egel Hazahav, the golden calf, emerges right after the Israelites experience the miracles, the beautiful miracles of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of leaving Egypt. And so if they could build a golden calf and worship that golden calf just after Egypt, how much stronger is that desire for us today? And we might feel like, oh, I'm not an idolater. I don't believe in this false god, right? But actually, idolatry can be understood as making any non-absolute an absolute. Right? Only God is the absolute. And when we make any other object or idea an absolute, that's avodah zarah. Right? So in many cases, it can be the self. One merely serves the self. In the Sefer Chinuch, we're going to see this later around the Yetzer Hara, that when we are aware that we're causing suffering to another, but we still do it because it makes us feel good, that's idolatry, because we're ultimately serving ourselves. For some, it's sports teams. I mean, literally, they live and die by sports teams. They can't get excited about moral ideas or intellectual ideas or religious ideas, but when it comes to sports, that's really where their passion lies. Or superstars, not only just superstars, TV stars. And there's even a show, American Idol, right, that we idolize these people in society who strike us as being cool. The idolatry of land, of course, it's very possible, even among Jews today, to not just say the land is important, but that I make it an end in itself, right? I really idolize the land. Or for some, it's ideology, some sort of ideology which becomes the end all, or nationalism, right? But actually, what I think is the biggest avodah zarah in our time, and the biggest threat to Judaism, is actually materialism, gashmiut. I want more stuff. I spend my entire life trying to get more stuff and buy more stuff and use more stuff. And nothing makes me more sad than not getting the stuff I want or someone else having the stuff that I want. So in fact, I think the biggest avodah zarah, the biggest sort of foreign worship that we do today is this constant desire of acquisition, of production and consumption. Now, I'm not promoting asceticism, that we shouldn't enjoy the world and get pleasure in the world, but rather that spiritual values and our moral commitments should primarily be what drives us, primarily be what we seek to serve through. Now, the big question emerges today of how do we deal with others who our tradition in some ways thinks of as Ovdei Avodah Zarah, as idolaters. And this is very complex. And just to touch on the issue for a moment, first we have the concept, of course, of shituf. We are monotheists as Jews. There's only one God, and that itself means very different things to rationalists and Kabbalists and beyond. But that we also, and so we don't engage with other gods. But shituf in the Talmud means that we understand that other religious people of other religions, as long as the one true God is a part of their systems of divinity, of their Godhead, so to speak, then that can be acceptable through shituf. But the biggest chidush, the biggest insight comes from the Menachem Meiri, which we talk about all the time, 13th century France. And the Meiri basically says that we don't treat lawful people anymore as idolaters. Kind of flips it on its head, that it's not ritual and dogma that defines idolatry, but rather our legal and moral commitments. That we can't say that someone who obeys the law of the land, who seeks out justice in society, that because of their beliefs and their religious practice, that they would be considered like an idolater. And so he says, we don't discriminate in our times towards this category of idolaters, as we may have done in the days of old. So the last point I want to share here, it comes from the Maharal. The Maharal, the 16th century Prague, has a great insight around this question of peace versus truth. Right? We know that the Jewish tradition values truth very highly, but also there's times that truth can be suspended for various reasons. Most commonly, one is shalom, is for the sake of peace. And he says something very interesting in Nativot Olam, number 1, Nativ Emet 1, that he says, Beit Hillel states that one should always praise the bride as being beautiful. Right? This is the classic case. Doesn't matter how you view the bride as beautiful or not, but that when you see her, you should always tell her she's beautiful, because that is the ethical thing to do. That's in Ketubot 17a in the Talmud. But he says, you might think you're suspending truth when you tell a bride she's beautiful when you don't believe so in the name of peace. But he's saying, actually, you're not. When we tell a bride that she is beautiful, in fact, we are telling the truth, if not through our own eyes, through the eyes of the groom, through the eyes of the chatan. So in fact, beauty is relative. When we speak the truth of beauty, we understand that the perception of beauty emerges differently from different people. And we may perhaps extend this toward truth as well. That someone else understands God to be someone or something. And that understanding is fundamentally different than ours. And so we can't call it objectively true what they're arguing. But in some subjective realm, built on this Maharal idea, we may actually say that according to them it is true. Not in its objective manifestation, but where it emerges in the neshama. In the soul, there is a stirring and a desire to connect to God. And from that desire emerges a belief and an engagement with divinity. And so while we have a great taboo and many prohibitions around anything involving avodah zarah, and making a graven image and prostrating oneself in a way that would feel like service, or even engaging with statues or idols in a way that doesn't seem like service, but is service according to the other tradition, that nonetheless we are challenged in modernity, and all the more so in postmodernity, to see the relativity of truth as it's experienced in this world of lies, really, a world of false externalities, false exteriorities, in order that we can transcend this world to some degree and see a higher form of truth. And more than looking to smash and uproot the idols that someone else worships, our job is to uproot the idols within ourselves. That each of us has idolatries within ourselves, that we serve the stuff that we buy, we serve our ideologies, we make them end. Perhaps we're nationalists, so we serve the land as an end in itself. Right? Or we serve the body, we view our bodies as what we truly are, or we serve or idolize these stars, sports players or rock stars, or whoever the case is. And our challenge is ultimately to clear our heads, clear our hearts, clear our souls of making things that ought to be the means into the ends, and rather serve the one true God. And we primarily do that by emulating the path of compassion. So in fact, in olden days, we thought about smashing other people's religions. And God forbid, today, we smash anyone's source of faith or hope. But rather, we seek to smash the callousness of our own heart, the lies within ourselves that lead us towards the narcissism or making the means into the ends, morally or spiritually. So I give us all the bracha here from Herzliya, here in Israel, that we should continue to build bridges between different faiths. And as we do so, we should continue to uproot the lies within ourselves and the graven images that we come to worship. I look forward to continuing this learning together. Have a terrific day.